Welcome to Spiritual Changemakers, the podcast that guides you through tough times with practical tools and inspiring stories. I'm Andrea Thomas, your host and the Sacred Transitions Coach. Join us as we hear from spiritual changemakers who have connected with their higher power and overcame adversity. Whether you are navigating a difficult transition or seeking to deepen your spiritual practice, our podcast provides guidance to help you find magic in the change. Come on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation with us and unlock your potential to become your best self. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to an episode on Spiritual Changemaker. Today we are having a special guest. We have Abby, and what we are going to discuss today is how do you rise above trauma and define empowerment and purpose. So if this is something that you are interested in, how to overcome your trauma, and not just that, but how do you find your purpose and you feel empowered after a big trauma in your life, this is an episode for you. And I just want to introduce briefly Abby. She is a second generation Latina Canadian and is a passionate mental health advocate. She's an international best-selling author and women's transformation coach. And I'm so excited because her expertise and her background is so interesting. She has 17 years of experience in nursing. Isn't that crazy? I cannot wait to dive deeper and have such a beautiful, profound, and transformational conversation with her.
Hi there.
Yes, welcome. Before we dive deeper into today's topic, which is how to rise above and overcome trauma so you can find purpose and empowerment, I would love for you, I said a brief introduction about you, but I would love for you to just give a little bit more context about yourself and why this subject, why trauma, and how do you go about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, I do have a nurse background for 17 years, which is unreal to think about doing something for that long. But I'm actually transitioning out of nursing to really pursue my passion, which is helping other women transform their lives, to heal their lives. And this is really just stemming from my own personal journey that began probably about the real journey began as a child. But the transformational journey for me began about years ago. So summer 2014 is when I had hit a crossroads in my life and really needed to make some changes. So I guess going back from that point in my life, I grew up in a pretty volatile household with a father who fortunately struggled with addiction and mental health. And yeah, so things were just really chaotic and crazy. And obviously there was good times. I grew up with two sisters. I'm the oldest. And we had some great memories together and everything like that. But underneath it all, there was a lot of pain and there was a lot of trauma that I experienced as a child. And culturally, societally, it's one of those things that you don't talk about. You don't tell anyone about. No one speaks openly about these things. What happens in the home stays in the home is the motto, and let alone processing, learning how to process the things that we're experiencing. Right. And so I had to come up with ways to process and deal with it myself. And as a child, you internalize a lot of these things, right? Like you don't understand what's happening around you. You start to think maybe it's my fault. Maybe I deserve this, all those kind of like ideas and thoughts. And so, yeah, so that kind of led to very early on depression, anxiety for me as a young girl. I just remember always feeling just down and just like confused about life. And I would ask, my mom, like, why do I feel this way? And when she was going through her own struggles and trauma at the same time, and she would just tell me the best that she could tell me, which was just don't think about these things. They'll just go away and and then just move on type of thing. And so a lot of destructive behaviors, self-sabotaging behaviors that I really picked up and patterns and coping mechanisms that weren't healthy just to try to deal. And actually it was really more to numb it, numb the pain, numb the confusion. And then eventually when I was a teenager at 15, I began drinking alcohol. And so that was the ultimate pain reliever for me, where it was like instant. I like for the first time ever it was the first time that I actually didn't think about anything, didn't feel anything. And it was like an instant addiction for me, where it was like really medication from the get go. And that led to about 15 years of really heavy alcohol abuse. And towards the end, which is about 9 years ago, like I mentioned, I was pretty much a daily drinker. I drank pretty much to blackout and then just repeated that cycle over and over again. So it's just a very dark time in my life, a very confusing time in my life. But there was a little tiny glimmer of hope that I had because I was married to an incredible person who I'm still married to, my husband and partner, Nelson. And we had a home. I was working, we're traveling, all of that good stuff. Outside, it looked like everything was amazing. But inside, I was very much struggling. And so it all came to a head in 2014. And I just made that decision where I really knew in my heart of hearts that if something didn't change, that I wouldn't wake up one morning. Like one day I would not be here anymore. Right. And that was really terrifying for me to really get that close because I really felt that I was playing with fire. The life I was leading was just not, it wasn't going anywhere good. Right.
Yeah.
And so that began my healing and recovery journey, which I've been on intensively for the past 9 years.
Mhm. Yes, and I would also say that it never stops. It's not going to stop. And
It's
I have so many questions while you're sharing, but also before I started, ask you all of those questions to dive a bit deeper into your story and how you overcame it, how you got to that point. I want to ask you something that I ask each and every one of my guests, which is how do you define spirituality? What is spirituality for you?
Mm. The way I define it is that it's that connection to something bigger and greater than yourself. And for me, that has been instrumental in my recovery journey. Because when something is so much bigger than you, like an addiction or trauma, like things that are beyond our control, which is 99% of like
Yeah.
there has to be something that we can lean on, we can rely on, that we can connect to give us that guidance and that hope. And for me, that looks the God of my understanding when that's something that has helped me through the darkest and toughest times. Because regardless of the lonely journey that I was on for a little while and the pain and the trauma, I truly was never alone. And I've always felt that. I've had some pretty intense kind of spiritual experiences from early on in childhood that have firmly implanted in me the belief that there is something bigger than me out there, that I am being watched over, that I am protected. And that has been really such a beautiful journey to deepen in, especially in the last few years, where I've really deepened my spirituality, and that's my connection to myself, and therefore my connection to something bigger than me. So that's in a nutshell how I would define it.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And that's one of the reasons why I have named this podcast Spiritual Changemakers, because if there is something that I can attribute my growth and the way I have showed up during the challenging times in my life that helped me the most, I would say, is spirituality. And that's why I'm giving the audience all these different definitions of spirituality, because there is not one way or it has to look in a certain way. It's for each and every person to find their definition. But I would say the connection with something bigger, it's crucial through life, because you go and you feel that you are not alone. You don't go through it alone and you don't have to figure it out alone. And then you rely on something else other than your own power. So that's one of the reasons why this podcast is called the Spiritual Change Makers. And thank you for sharing. And moving forward with your story, because you said you started in 2014 when you made that decision that that's it. I'm at a point after 15 years, you said that you have been addicted. I'm at a point where I either make a change or I'm going to die. I'm not gonna be able to continue. When you got to that point, when you have made that decision, what has shifted? Because you already have been in it for 15 years. So you could have easily continued the same for another who knows how long your body would have kept you.
Yeah.
So what shifted in that moment that you are like, I have to make a decision?
Like I said, I woke up one morning and I just vividly remember it was like after a usual weekend bender. And I just woke up and I had this deep, heavy feeling, like soul level kind of heavy feeling where I was just like, it was almost like when they show in the movie where your life flashes before your eyes and you see a picture of your life. It was like that for me where I woke up, I had this deep sinking feeling, and it was like this like flash moment where it was like literally something spoke to me, something I pictured, this isn't going to go on for much longer. You're really playing with fire here. And you're one of these days, like I had mentioned earlier, you're not going to wake up. You're not going to open your eyes. And is that really what you want? And a part of my journey and my story and with my mental health struggles is suicide. And that was something that I really played with a lot from starting up age 9, then again 12, and then in my teens, and then in my early adult years. So there was 4 times where I attempted to take my own life. And the pain had gotten so deep in those moments. But really now because I've done a ton of inner work in the last 9 years, and I've really been curious about the things and like why did I behave this way or why did I turn to this and all those kind of things. And at that time, in those moments where, where I attempted, it was really a cry for help. It was like I was in so much intense pain that I felt like this was my only option. But in my heart of hearts, in the depths of my soul, it wasn't what I truly wanted. It's just that I had no other options, no other, in my mind, I just had no other way out. And yes, like when that moment came and I wake up in the morning, I feel this deep sinking feeling. I just started to think about the people that I still have in my life that truly believed in me, that loved me, my husband being one of them, the close friends and family that I had. And then I thought about if I were to go ahead and do this, then if I were to die tomorrow, let's say, I would be transferring all that pain and hurt that I had been carrying all my life to them. Not something that I felt okay with, or it was like I still had a few people that truly believed in me, that truly were hurting to see me destroy my life in this way. And that was a really big breaking point for me where it was like, okay, this is not an option anymore. If I'm getting close to this way of life or ending this way of life, then what am I going to do about it? And to be honest, I had no idea. It was just, it was a decision. I just said, okay, something needs to change. I need help. I need something. And I fell to my knees and I prayed to whatever was out there. 'Cause during that period of active addiction for me, I was very disconnected, not only to myself, but spiritually as well. Even though I knew in the back of my mind that I was guided and protected, at the same time, I ignored it. I purposely ignored it. I purposely disconnected myself because there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of loneliness in the journey. And I purposely made it that way so that it would be, I don't know, it was just weird. It was like, so that it would be painful. And so it came full circle in that moment where I really reached out to whatever was out there. To me, like I said, it was a God of my understanding. And I just said, help me. And so then I just pretty much reached out to the first person that was there to support me was my husband, when he was just very much for me and very much with me and was like, what can we do? What can you do? And I just said, I just needed to just be there for me. And I'm going to like figure this out somehow. And so I went on that journey pretty much in the beginning, which was very explorative and just trying things and looking for resources and supports, and was really the mindset and mentality of whatever it takes, whatever it's going to take. I'm willing, I'm open because I have no other choices or options, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And I heard you saying quite a few things there. And so you started with the decision. You woke up with very deep feeling in your heart that you're like, that's it. I cannot continue this way. And you said that you literally had flashbacks where you're like, if I'm going to continue this way, I'm not going to have much time left here on earth. So you made the decision and you just started asking for help, like started asking for something out there. Like you said, you want to live in disconnecting, but starting asking for something out there, whatever source it was. And then outside help. And you had your husband, thanks God, he stayed with you through all of that. And the last thing you said is that you had the mentality of doing whatever it takes because there is no other option. But you mentioned something very deep. When you mentioned that, I had like goosebumps my whole body. And you said, if there would be for me to go right now, to that, don't be alive anymore. If tomorrow I would die, that means I would transfer my pain, my trauma to my family. And that's so huge. Like I have again goosebumps from my whole body because that's so huge. And I think a lot of people don't understand yet the concept and don't see the correlation between our own trauma and transferring it further through our family. So can we touch a little bit on that and how is that correlated? Our own trauma, how do we even transfer that to our close friends, family, and so on?
Very similarly, one of the topics that I speak very strongly about is about breaking generational chains of abuse, of addiction, of trauma. And just like when let's say I would have chosen to continue in that lifestyle, and I eventually would have had children, let's say, which I do have children now, but I was definitely like very much well into my sober journey when I began my motherhood journey. But let's say that like I continued this lifestyle and I had children and they grew up exactly like I grew up, watching their parents abuse substances, be violent, abusive, all those kind of things that gets transferred onto them. And unless somebody in the lineage says it ends with me, no more, I'm changing, that will continue. Those patterns will continue. And so similarly, when we are in active addiction or just in that lifestyle, the people around us that care about us the most are the ones who are most affected, right? I still have people in my life who are in active addiction and it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And we have one of two choices in that situation. We either willingly and mindfully cut ourselves off from that person because the pain is so great to watch them do that to themselves, or we get involved in it. We get involved in it and we're not really helping them. We're not rising above them or anything. We're in that pool together. And the way I looked at it was that I was a product of that generational transfer of addiction, abuse, and all that kind of stuff. And I made that decision where I said, and no more of this. And at that time, I didn't fully understand the ripple effects of that decision. I just knew that enough was enough. And it wasn't an option for me. And so that really sort of motivated that decision for myself. And yeah, basically what I encompassing it all is really the transfer, right? The chains. If we don't do something about it, then it's going to continue. And then it just goes on and on. And yeah, so that's the way I looked at it, where it was like, this is, like I said, it was like this surreal experience of really picturing the two paths of life, right? One of them, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. The other was darkness. And when I chose that little tiny spark at the end of the tunnel for me.
Yes, and you also mentioned that you had no idea how you're gonna do that. You said, I know I want to change. I know I want to like stop this cycle, but I don't know yet how I'm gonna do it. And I think this is such an important message for people not to get hung up on, but how am I gonna get about it? How long is it going to take me? How am I gonna do it? So it's really like when you do that, starting with the decision that I am going to create a shift. I'm going to break the cycle and trusting that each and every step that you are meant to take towards this change is going to come to you. That you don't need to jump and know 10 steps ahead of you. It's enough to start with making the decision. And then the rest of the steps are going to unfold. And the reason why this speaks so strongly to me, like breaking the generational patterns, traumas, and so on. Because for me, I know 100% with no doubt that I am that person in my family. And I have made that decision very consciously after a few years after I started on this path because I had no idea that's what I'm also meant to do. And where it was also very confirmed for me was when I was in Bali And I did a soul massage, which is far from just a massage. It's like the most transformational thing I have ever done.
Mhm.
And it was like a 2 hour session. And one of the things I have done in that session was releasing my ancestors' trauma, my parents' trauma, and then my own trauma. It was so intense that literally the healer at the end, she told me, Andrea, you have been to hell, then you came back.
Mm. Wow.
And I am a big believer that if any of the listeners, like they have goosebumps as well when they listen to these things as I have, that you might be that change maker in your family. And it is okay. Don't take it as a responsibility, but take it as an honor
Mm.
that you have been the one chosen to break the cycle. Because I do believe it's an honor that we were chosen, because I think we were chosen before we even came on earth, that this toxic cycle is going to stop with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got goosebumps you sharing that because it is so true. In anything in life, when we embark on something new that we've never been down, a new path, a new goal, whatever it looks like, we don't know exactly how it's gonna map out. Like we don't know exactly like at this point in my life, this is what's gonna happen. And at this point, that we don't know the step by step, but what we do know is the final vision, the final, this is where I want to get to. And for me, at that time when I made that decision, I knew that the final vision was to heal. I needed the peace and the healing and whatever it was going to take to get to that place. I was just open and willing to try it. But not everything worked, but most things helped me. Like I learned from it, I grew from it. And eventually it led to a place where I can honestly say now, all these years later, I feel healed. I feel healed. And like we beginning, this is an ongoing journey. There is no destination. There is no arrival date. I'm not going to get to a place where it says, I've arrived, I've healed fully, I can move on. It's a lifelong quest and it's a beautiful one. It really is because there is no end date, because there is no arrival date. It's exciting to know that we're jumping into something new. We're jumping into something exciting and we're getting to learn deeper layers of ourselves more than we've ever even imagined. Like now that I've been able to connect with myself, with I affectionately call my inner child little me, and I've been able to connect with little me. It is just so profound the healing that has gone on in that reconnection, in that acknowledgement, in that validation, to look at her, to feel her pain, to process her pain, to say everything you've experienced is valid. It wasn't your fault. I believe you. And look where we are now, right? It's such a beautiful thing. And obviously now I'm a mother. I have 3 children. I'm expecting my fourth on the way here. And it's just,
Congratulations.
thank you. And it is just one of those things where it's just, I'm seeing the direct effects of that decision I made 9 years ago with my children. They've never seen me drink. They've never seen me lash out in violence, like things like that I had already experienced at their age. Like they've just witnessed a totally different mother and just parent figure than what would have been if I wouldn't have made that decision, which I honestly don't think I would have had children if I wouldn't,
Yeah.
if I would have gotten sober, to be honest. It wasn't really anything that was in my trajectory. I was needing to just survive. So it really is a beautiful journey. It's a painful one sometimes and challenging, but anything worthwhile in this world is. And so,
Unfortunately, it's just a matter of learning how to hold both, because
yes,
we cannot avoid it. If we are here on this planet, that's the
yeah,
reason why we came here, to experience both, to experience the polarity, the duality. So it's a matter of learning how to move through life and hold both instead of wishing it to only be one way or one side. And I would like for us to talk a little bit about the healing. You said, okay, your final vision. That's another point where you said your final vision was that you want to heal, you want to be healed. And how do people go about to be like, oh my God, I am so much more healed right now? Because as we talked, there is no final destination. But I am so much more healed. I'm so much better than how I used to be right now, let's say a few months or a few years along the line. And how people can actually like stop and acknowledge that and see that, because I think that's such a big thing for people to stop and acknowledge their progress, their evolution, and not just constantly chasing and being like, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm not there. So how do they go about like, okay, now I am more healed?
Mhm. The way that I know that I'm in a so much better place than I used to be is that life goes on, irregardless of substances and trauma and addictions and abuse and all that kind of stuff. We still are living on this planet and we're still walking on this earth and we're faced with so many things that come to us, right? Like loss, like losing loved ones, facing like real hardships, right? Like anything, like there's just, we're faced with adversity still. And that was one quite kind of funny story. Like early on into my journey, I realized this, where it was like, okay, I thought that once I quit drinking, that my life was going to be all like rainbows and fairy tales. Why am I still having problems? And it was like, no, actually, the big difference is that the huge difference now is that when I'm faced with these really difficult situations, I don't turn to numb them. I actually now have resources and tools that I can actually, I like to picture this beautiful treasure chest and I opened it up and there's all these shiny, beautiful tools and resources that I picked up along my journey. And so when something comes at me in my life, I go immediately to this treasure chest. I open it up and I'm like, okay, what tool and resource can I use here to help me through this time? And there's always something in there. There's never a time when it's just I'm stumped and I'm like, there's not. And so that's the big difference is that now I have healthy ways of coping, healthy ways of dealing with the things that come at me. And that makes me, that's a confirmation and an affirmation that I'm so much better than I used to be. Whereas before, my only answer to any of life's problems was to numb it. I just didn't want to deal with it. I couldn't. I had no, I couldn't not, it wasn't even about not wanting to. It was that I couldn't because I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the support. And so with my own brain and thinking, I just numbed it away. And and when we numb something, obviously with my nursing background, I'm going to use a little bit of an analogy. We think about a wound. When we get that wound, we have to take care of it and clean it and make sure and disinfect it, make sure it doesn't get worse or anything like that. If we don't do that, the other side is to just slap something on it, like a band-aid, and just pretend it's not there. And then you don't take care of it, but it's still there. It's still there. And so that's really how when we numb things, that's what we do. We just slap a band-aid on it, we pretend it's not there, and we move on with life, but it's still there and it could even get infected. It could, or maybe it starts healing and you come and you pick off the scab, that kind of a thing. Whereas now I acknowledge the wound, I clean it, I cleanse it, I bandage it up, I look after it until it's healed. And there will be scars, scars will remain, but and it's me, it serves as a reminder of, okay, this was the time when, and then it has a story behind it, a story of survival, a story of hope, a story of healing. And so I wear those emotional and those physical scars proudly now because they're almost like battle wounds. They're like, this is the time when I fought this.
That's awesome. And I know what also helps me and have learned from one of my mentors that when we go through something is to go through that experience, through that challenge, through that trauma, as we want to tell a story afterwards, as we want to write a chapter in our book about that experience. And then the way you are showing up during that time is going to be so different because you want to talk about it. Eventually, you want to share with the world. You want to help others that are going through a similar thing. And for me, I remember when I had my motorbike accident in Thailand, and I had my right shoulder was partially dislocated. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot even take a shower. I cannot even put my hair up. It was like very bad the first few days. But I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to make out of this story like one of the best things in Thailand. I'm going to make such an amazing story that I'm going to end up telling to my friends, to my family, to my audience. And then the way I have showed up during that time, it was like when I look back, I'm like, wow. I'm like, wow, Andrea, I'm so proud of you. And I think that this is what it does when we also make the conscious decision while we are during that hard time. It's like, how do I want to tell this story later on?
Mm, exactly. And I know it's cheesy, but I've heard this before and I've been hearing it a lot more lately where it's like, your story, your pain, your trauma, and the overcoming of it can eventually become someone else's survival guide. Because one of the biggest things that I really felt overarching as a child, as a teen, was this feeling, this deep sense of aloneness. Like I was the only one. No one in my pain, no one gets me. No one's dealt with these kind of things because, like I said, no one ever really talked about these things. Like mental
Yeah.
health is very, we've made some progress, but like a long way to go to really destigmatize these kind of things. And when one of the things that was really impactful for me when I began my healing journey was hearing other people speak about their stuff and about their traumas and about their pains and their stories of overcoming it. It was like a beacon of hope for me. It just took one person for me to meet, one person that I could see myself in that said, I know what you're going through. This is where I used to be, and this is where I'm at now. That made me believe and feel, okay, if it's possible for them, then it's possible for me. And that's what I feel is the gift in the, like, I have a talk that's called the gift of pain. And really, that's what it is that we turn these things into a gift that we can share with other people so that they don't feel so alone, that they don't feel they're the only ones and they have an example of what it looks like to overcome these things and that it is possible.
Yes. And well, that's why when I have done recently my talk at my Mandala University, at the end I spoke with a girl and she was crying and telling me, "Oh my God, I lost my partner like a month and a half ago." And I was like, wow. And I cannot believe you're here. Like, first and foremost, I really want to acknowledge you for being here. This is such a huge step. And she just started sharing with me how she feels so down, so lonely, so dark, and that she sees no hope there because she's, but I'm so alone and I don't know how to get out of it. And then at the end, she shared with me how my story and my talk inspired her and gave her hope.
Exactly.
Where this takes me is that our traumas and our stories are not ours to keep, but they are to share because that's how we're gonna heal ourselves and help others heal as well. We are not gonna heal them, but we're gonna give them the hope and inspiration that there is a way for
Yeah.
them as well.
I'm such a firm believer, and in the work that I do with coaching women through their own transformational journeys, I don't necessarily think that you have to have such an intense kind of a story, right? Like intense trauma, abuse, addictions, all those kind of things to have value in your story. I truly believe that every single human being on this planet has a unique and powerful story of their own to share with someone. That because again, we don't leave this earth unscathed, all of us. When we're walking this earth, we're going to be faced with challenges and adversities, and it looks very different for many different people. But the point is that unless we actually learn to verbalize and share those hard things, those things that keep us down, those things that we want to numb, the things that we're ashamed of, right? We're really keeping that gift that we can actually share with someone else who's out there longing to see themselves in someone else.
Mhm.
And so I truly believe that we all have a story to tell. And I encourage people, find your voice and share your story. Even if you think it's minimal or that no one can relate. Oh, mine doesn't matter. It's that you'd be surprised who's out there who's just waiting and wishing that they could see themselves in someone else. And have some sort of a connection with someone knowing that, hey, they actually get me. Hey, they'd actually experience something similar to me. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing to be able to do that, especially in the day and age now of social media where we're able to like speak our voice, speak our mind when other people get access and exposure. I think it's just such a cool thing to be able to do that. And so I really encourage people to share your story. Even if you don't think it matters, it does matter to someone else when it matters to you and to little you.
Yes, and I love that you share that because I do hear people even like coming to me and like, "Oh my God, you've been through so much. I haven't been through not even close to things that you have been through." And I'm like, but it's not about comparing. And it's not just because your trauma and your life experience is different, it doesn't mean it's less than or that it was easier because we all experience things in different ways. So I love that you share that and to encourage people to share their story because there is no less than, no matter what you've been through. And as Abby said, you don't have to have these like big, huge traumas in your life in order to feel worthy of sharing, in order for you to feel that my story is good enough.
Mhm.
Because how I heard from Lisa Nichols when I started on my personal development journey back in 2017, I think, where she shared that there are people out there who are literally just waiting for your message, your voice, your light. That's it, only for yours. They are only going to shift, create a change, and move out of where they are at only because they're gonna see you, like no one else, because no one else had your signature, your vibration, your energy, your experience. So when you think about it in that way, then you're like, okay, there's actually people out there that are just waiting for me. That's it. And don't put it as a responsibility thing, but put it more as an empowerment, like to empower yourself to empower others.
Exactly. 100%. You hit the nail on the head. Exactly what I feel and think. Because there's been so many instances, obviously now being in the personal development world and being around other change makers and other people who are sharing their story like yourself. It's just, like I said, everybody just has such a beautiful and unique message and story. And I see how it impacts various people. Even if your story isn't similar, there's still value in it. And just the fact that we've overcome something or that we've faced something hard, because in the moment of those hard times, we don't see the light. We think like we're in it when we're in the darkness, and in those hard times, you just think like, when is this going to end? Or is this going to end? And when just to see somebody else that was in that moment at one point in their life, and they just held on to that hope and they made it on the other side, is powerful enough. Whether it's a big event, a small event, it's something that you've still chosen to overcome. And then you can share from a place of overcoming and healing. And it's just so powerful. There's just nothing more powerful than that human level connection of sharing our deepest pains and the gifts that we can bring from them.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And well, stories are healing. And what I have noticed with my story and with other people's stories, that when you share your story, your traumas, your experiences, first and foremost, it's healing for you. And then you are offering that healing to the world.
Mhm.
And Abby, I would like for us to touch a little bit on what are some tools, some practical tools that we can give to our audiences so they can deal, overcome, and feel empowered by their own traumas.
Mhm. So first and foremost, I am a firm believer in professional help. It has helped me tremendously to see like a therapist. I've seen one for the last 9 years. I have two of them actually that have been with me on my journey for the past 9 years, and they are instrumental. So that for sure is something that I really highly encourage people to find the right fit in somebody that can help guide you with some of these bigger things, even smaller things, right? I'm just a firm believer in professional help. And then aside from that, some of the biggest tools for me that I began early on in my journey that I have carried me through up until this point was first journaling,
Mm.
really jotting down my experiences. And just recently I found a journal of mine that was for my first year in recovery. And it was like when I first started joining some of these support groups and some of these, yeah, just like these exactly just support groups. And they were like, and I found this and I was literally in tears because it was so raw. I would write about my experience after my first meeting, where I came in and met these other people who were similar to me, who had shared their stories. And it was like pages and pages of my thoughts, my feelings, the things that were coming up for me, my fears, how I was in awe from some of these people. It was so beautiful and so healing. And that's still one of the things like, obviously I'm a published author now and I love to write. I just love writing down my thoughts and feelings because in our head, it's all jumbled up sometimes. I don't know about you, but for me, it's just like a billion things going on in my head. Right. And when I actually sit with myself and put pen to paper, it's amazing the things that come out. So that's one of the biggest tools for myself. The other thing is meditation. So for me, and that looks very different for so many different people. For me, it's just taking moments in my day to sit in stillness and to allow my inner self to speak and listen to it because it will always tell you what it needs. You know what you need. It's just that you're, I guess, clouded with everything happening in your life and the problems and all that kind of stuff that you don't realize what you're actually craving and yearning for. And so to give yourself that little bit of stillness and silence to just let those things come up is so powerful. And it'll tell you like you need rest or you need a really good healthy meal, or you need to write something, or you need to meet with this friend, or whatever it is, right? So those two things for sure are something that is a non-negotiable for me on a day-to-day basis. And having a really strong support system. So really strong people that you can turn to, that you trust, that will not necessarily counsel you, but just be there for you, right? Unconditionally. I think that's so important to have a really strong support system of people and of tools and resources. So probably those three things would be the things that really come up for me right away. And then obviously having that spiritual connection is instrumental for me as well. Just whatever it is that nourishes you is spiritually is for sure has to be a priority.
Beautiful. So you said the journaling, which you eventually turn on into books, which is amazing. Meditation, and you said for you the meditation, it's the stillness, and just instead of having it like, okay, I'm meditating every single morning for 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, and you find moments throughout your day to be still and to listen to what you need. And I think that's such a huge thing.
I mean,
Because we find ourselves frustrated, and then it's like, why do I feel frustrated? And it can be because of so many things, like lack of sleep. Maybe you're thirsty. Maybe you need to go for a walk. But if you don't stop and listen, then you wouldn't know. And support system. So that can look so different again for everyone. Your support system can be the professional help if you don't have any good friends or family around you. But it can also be your lover, your husband, your best friend, whoever it is. But I would say at least having two people, if it's possible, at least two people that you can count on and ask for support, and you are there for each other unconditionally. And then the spiritual connection, which we also talked about at the beginning, that it's so important. I would say for me, my whole life shifted when I started adding this spiritual connection from being so disconnected because I grew up Catholic. I went to the church every single Sunday until 18, I think, until I went to the university. And after I went to university, I'm like, I don't want to go to the church anymore. And I was having this yucky, bad feeling around church. And I'm like, I don't think just it's right that I don't think God really wants us to live with guilt and shame, because that's how I was feeling from going to church every single Sunday. And then I decided to just put it on the side, and I just live pretty much fully disconnected from 18 until I discovered spirituality, which was at 27.
Mhm.
So,
Wow.
so a lot of years, a lot of years. And no matter what I was doing during those years, no matter where I would move, what I would work, because I was constantly looking for this external validation, external happiness. No matter what I was doing, nothing would make me happy. I would achieve it and I would look up for the next thing. I would achieve it and look for the next thing, because I was so disconnected from myself and then from a higher power. So, as I said, guys, at the beginning, spirituality, it's a huge thing, no matter how you call it, how you name it, as long as you have this connection with something higher than yourself, I can tell you it's going to totally transform your life.
Definitely. And that just made me think about we've been having storms lately here, and I love thunder and rain and storms. And there's just something about it that I love. And I got this, I guess like almost a desire or craving to just like go outside in my yard barefoot and just like in the like wet grass kind of feeling. And so I did that. And it was just like, it's so cool. It just to connect yourself to like earth and
Mhm.
that it was just nourished by like earth nourished earth. Like by the rain and when it's just and you look up at the sky and the clouds and like all that kind of stuff. It's just it's so cool when you look at it in this awe and wonder and know that there's just something bigger than you that created that, and then it almost I felt wrapped in like safety and protection. Just Mother Earth takes care of itself. You're cared for as well. And for me, there's a loving God out there that loves me, that believes in me, that has protected me all of my life. And I never have to be alone. I never have to be alone, and I will always be nourished through it. And so it's such a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Mhm,
And also for those that have lost someone close to them, someone dear. For me, also the connection with the spirituality, it helps me see my life partner in everything.
mhm,
Like in everything I do, I see him everywhere
mhm,
because I'm also a big believer that nothing is really gone. So even if you lost someone dear to you, know that they will always be with you and they live through you.
mhm, mhm. And the memories and the experiences and yeah, it's a gift, right? To know and love in this world, to experience that fully and truly, both the depths of the pain and then the depths of love, like both those polar kind of opposites
Mhm.
make each experience that much richer. Because unless you experience in my own journey, the reason why I'm so grateful and so thankful for where I'm at today is because I remember what it was like before in the darkness, in the pain, in the shame, in the trauma, all of those things. And I can appreciate it so much more because I remember what it was like back then. And it's like this full circle moment where it's a sweet doesn't taste as sweet until you taste the bitter. When you taste the bitter, and then you taste sweetness, it's like, oh, then you have this different appreciation towards it. So I think life is very much like that as well.
Yes, and it's also so beautiful to come to the conclusion that all we have is the rainbow. All we have is this present moment when you are watching this, when you are listening. This is all we have, and everything else, it's not here. So it's an illusion of the future or a memory of the past. So it's
Mhm.
very important for us to learn to live in the present moment because when we learn to do that's when you also connect so much deeper with yourself and with the higher power.
Exactly.
And before
Mhm.
we wrap up, because wow, we are almost at the top of the hour. What is something that you would like to leave the audience with, Abby, that maybe they are going right now to a trauma, they are having mental health issues, maybe they are dealing with an addiction. What is one thing that you would like to leave them with?
Love this quote, and I don't know who wrote it, but I have it written down here. I'm going to share it because it's so powerful and and encompasses the message that I want to impart with everyone. And it's please don't ever forget how far you've already come. When you choose healing, you're doing this for little you, for teenage you, for forgotten you, for your bloodline, for your liberation, for what's to come. It ends with you. You are not alone, nor do you have to walk alone through it. And that's really my big, bold message to people is that you have a beautiful and incredible story to share. And there's someone out there that really is praying and wishing and hoping to hear your story. So share it and just remember that you're so much further than you used to be, and there is hope. And it's a really, truly incredible life with the pain, with everything that comes with it. When we're present, we feel it. It really is. It's magical. When we're here and alive in this time for
We are, and it's Melissa that joined us a little bit. I don't know if she's here or not anymore. If she did a channeling for us at Mindville University, and one of the things she shared in that channeling was it's really time for the light workers to shine their light and to shine their light so much brighter because there is more light in the world than dark. But the issue so far has been that us, the light workers, have been holding back. So it's really time to get out there to share your message, to share your experience and to share your light because the world needs it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're doing such an incredible job of that. Yeah, like your story is incredible and the way you're choosing to live your life and show up for it is just so inspiring. And so I'm very honored to know you, that are your friend. And yeah, and I'm very thankful for you to give me the time and space to share on your platform as well today. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And it's an honor to have you on and to have you share your story and inspire more people. I know a lot of people are going to be inspired by this podcast because, well, you just have a very beautiful presence and beautiful story to share with the world as well. And I'm so thankful that we have reconnected recently
Yes.
because I know there is a reason behind it. And I always like to look at those synchronicities and know that there is a bigger reason behind it. And I really want to thank you for being here, for waking up so early. To be on this podcast. I really appreciate you. And I want to thank to each and every one of you for joining us, for listening. Let us know your biggest insights, your biggest breakthroughs. And do not forget that I love you, I appreciate you, and I believe in you so much. Thanks for tuning in to Spiritual Changemakers podcast. To stay connected and help us reach more people like you, please subscribe, follow, and leave a comment. Join our community of spiritual changemakers on social media to connect with like-minded individuals and continue the conversation. Remember, the power to create positive change is within you. Keep showing up as your best self, and let's keep the magic of change alive. Until next time.